Welcome to this week's Okay at Work with myself, Sarah Sawyer, and my colleague, Russell Berger, both attorneys at Offit Kurman. And today we are talking about business purchases. So there's a couple different ways that people purchase businesses. There's asset purchase agreements, there's stock purchase agreements. I know a lot of clients come to me and they're not quite sure the difference, and there is a pretty big difference between the two. So, kind of just setting the stage, Russell, what are some of the differences between the ways that, those two different approaches to purchasing a business?
Yeah, so to put it kind of in plain English, you can either buy, if you're buying a business, you can either buy the business's stuff, an asset purchase, right? So you're buying the equipment, the book of business, the goodwill, those sorts of things, or you can buy the business as a whole. So you're buying the stock or the membership or all the ownership interest, depending on how the business is structured. So you're getting everything. You're getting the assets as well as the liabilities. And there are certain liabilities that can get transferred regardless of how you structure this. And that's why you go through the whole process with corporate attorneys to, make sure the agreement's in place and you're allocating risk the right way as you're going forward. But certainly there's a much greater risk when you buy the whole of an entity, because you're getting everything, as opposed to when you just buy the assets of the business. In theory, you're just buying, these chunks of the business that you actually want to acquire.
Yeah, it gets interesting when folks come to us with, our corporate counsel with a business that's maybe not a super expensive business, right? Like maybe it's a $500,000 under deal, but they want to do a stock purchase. And there could be reasons for wanting to do a stock purchase, because you might want, to really step into, because you're really, in that instance, you're stepping into the shoes of the company that you're buying. And a lot of times that makes sense. But because of these liability, the fact that you're stepping into their shoes and you're taking on everything that they've done, all their history, there's a reason you might want to do that, but there's also some risk involved with that. And on these smaller deals, there's sometimes, you don't want to spend a ton of money from a proportionality perspective on getting the deal done. If it's a small deal, then all of a sudden, if you're doing $100,000 in legal fees, it feels like a lot. But something to really consider when you're doing a stock versus asset is that there is going to be this trailing liability. There is going to be, an increased need to look under the hood, as opposed to in an asset purchase where it's a little bit easier to kind of cut that liability off and say, all right, I'm taking the assets and then move, that we've got a hard stop here. And you don't want to kind of be too cheap to put it in the kind of simple way on the front end, and then have a lot of expensive liability on the back end.
Yeah, right. And you may be wondering, like, well, why would I ever do an ownership interest purchase as opposed to an asset purchase? And as you alluded to, like, there's good reasons to sometimes want to stand in the shoes of that target that you're acquiring. Particularly, we see it here in the context of government contracting. But maybe you can't just transfer that contract over. It's not assignable for whatever reason. Like but you need, the value is in having that contract. You don't have a lot of workaround other than to buy the business as a whole. And there's other things that are like that, where you would really want to, because things are not transferable, you really want to step into the shoes of the company that's being acquired. But as you said, Sarah, there's risk with that, but there are ways to hedge that too. And so while even when it's a smaller deal and you want to try to keep costs down, I think it's worth investing in, a good contract, a good purchase agreement, so that it allocates that risk properly. And at the same time, and this is true of any, business transaction, no matter the size, there are going to be tax consequences, good or bad, benefits you can have, depreciation, whatever it is, that, can be more complicated, particularly in if you're buying the entity as a whole. So those are conversations you should first have with your accountant. But then there are things we can do on the legal side as well to try to structure it or reorganize the entity or whatever it might be. There are options there as well. So I mean, even again, even in smaller deals, these are conversations that can be cost effective and really important to have.
Yeah, and good to have them ahead of time during the negotiation stage as well, so that you can really kind of suss out what's going to make the most sense for the specific business that you're buying before you start locking in terms with the other side. So always good to get the accountant and lawyer involved right up front so that you don't have to unwind any deal terms. Well, thanks, Russell. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Sarah.